Welcome to the TikTok podcast. The clock is always ticking, so let's synchronize our watches and dive in. I'm your host, Callie Brigham, and I'm here to help you make time for what matters. Hey friend, welcome to a TikTok episode. And if you're watching on YouTube, you're going to see a giant fluff ball microphone, which is pretty cute. So it's definitely a little extra. And this should mean that if you're listening only, that the sound is like epic. We're going places here on this podcast, I tell you what. And there are going to be some really fun things happening in the future. So stick with us. But I just had to, I would say, address the elephant in the room, or you could just say adjust the giant mic cover that's in the room. It should really help with the audio. So thanks, and a shout out to my good friend Will, who is all things audio, and he's been giving me some extra attention here. Okay, so let's dive in to our episode. As we have learned early on in this podcast, when you say no, you also say yes. Anybody remember that? It was actually my friend Randy who really honed in on that. And ever since, it's just stuck with me, and I hope it's stuck with you too. And that's what we're going to do today. So if you're listening in real time, this is the week of Thanksgiving. And so, of course, a fantastic time to do the usual giving of thanks, having gratitude, eating way too much. For me, it's stuffing or dressing. I guess it depends on where you grew up. I actually make my husband's grandmother's recipe with cornbread that you have to make in the skillet. Good Southern girl. Not originally from the South, but I claim it. And that is definitely the piece de resistance. For me, I could just literally eat that, and pumpkin pie. We actually get it from a local barbecue joint here in town. And the owner, her father-in-law, who is probably well into his 80s, home makes all of the pies. He makes a lemon pie, a brownie pie. Are you kidding? And his extra famous pumpkin pie. And the ratio is as God intended. It is about half pumpkin pie and about half homemade whipped cream. Oh. So we're actually going to be on the road this year. So as I'm talking about this and recording this, I'm feeling extra hungry and a little sad that I'm not going to be having those homemade things. But there's always Christmas, and there's always next year. But we're not going to stop there just with that food conversation or just with that thought, because when we do have a full plate, get it? We do need to be careful as to what we add. And that's where the no, N-O, in November comes in. Now, I know we're at the end of the month, and you're probably thinking this would have been a little bit helpful at the beginning of November, but don't worry. I have a plan. We're going to do this now so that we can say, oh, this is going to be pretty cheesy, but it's okay. If you've been with me this long, you know sometimes that just happens a little bit. We're going to say yes, December next month. Yeah. November, yes, December. So before we really get into the nitty-gritty of what this looks like, I just had a lunch with a couple of girlfriends, and really, I literally pulled out my phone. And you know, when you're at lunch with your girlfriends, you should put your phone away. But I pulled out my phone and I said, I'm taking a note on this, and this is going on the podcast. So I was with my friend Dawn and Ginger and Christy. And Christy was talking about a decision that she was making. She is in dermatology. She is a PA, and she actually was my PA and my husband's PA until she took a little sabbatical to have her 4 kids, her 4 babies. And so now she's going back just a little bit part-time, PRN here and there. And the physician that she's under, of course, that she really loves and respects, was talking to her, and he was wanting her to work more than she originally had said. Right? So she said she'd come back 1 day a week, etc. And now he's wanting her to come back 2 days a week and work here and there and all that good stuff. You know, those things happen, right? We give somebody an inch. So she was telling us, as we're saying, hey, fill us in on your life. And at one point, I guess he said something like, well, this would be good for you. Now he's talking about her professional career. And she looked at all of us and she said, good for who? He was saying this would be good for you because what he really meant was this would be good for him. And she said, the only good that I need to be for anybody right now, or the number one good, really, I should clarify, because she does love her profession, but she said, I need to make every decision that it's good for me and it's good for my family with 4 littles. And I was like, Christy, girl, I am writing that down. So the next time they may not say it in those words exactly, but if somebody gives you that impression or alludes to that, oh, you should say yes because this is a good thing to say yes to. Well, I just want you to remember yes and good for who or whom. Okay, so what we want to talk about today is how to say no to things that aren't good for you so you can say, or maybe not the best for you, so you can say yes to the things that are for you, for your family, for your goals as we finish out 2024. So in other words, saying no to non-essential obligations makes room for a more fulfilling holiday season, right? Isn't that what we want? Okay, so why is saying no such a powerful tool for busy mompreneurs, for busy women? I believe it's one of the most underused weapons. Now, it's kind of like sharpening a knife or a sword, I suppose. The more you say it, the more you feel powerful and you start to use it. It's such a different way of looking at it. No is now a weapon in your arsenal. It's not something to be afraid of or to feel guilty of using. It's actually one of the most important tools to protect your time. And I'm here to tell you, it does get easier and it actually gets a little addictive in a good way. Just try it. Just try me. Okay, so number one thing we're going to do is we're going to reframe the no. Not all invitations, not all obligations, not all traditions need a yes. Saying no can actually be an act of self-care. The other night, my mom was over having dinner. They're getting their kitchen renovated, so she doesn't have a kitchen, which means that when she feels like cooking, guess what? She gets to do it at my house. So she was over having dinner, and the kids were talking about travel, and they were talking about places to go and that they wanted to experience so many things, right? And I said, well, you remember what Yaya, that's what we call her, you remember what Yaya says about travel? And my mom said, well, I say a lot of things. What is it? I said, well, she has 2 outlooks on travel, and she is a world traveler, by the way. I think she would be great at having that as her career if she ever needed another one. But she says this. Number 1, she says that you approach going to a place as if you're coming back or as if you're going back. I know that there's a temptation to want to see everything and do everything. But if you have the perspective of, okay, I don't have to do everything on this trip because I will come back and I'll be able to experience something else the next time, then that really frees you up. So many people, when it comes to travel, I've heard that they just cram everything they can. Not only are they exhausted, but they're having to run from one thing to another and oftentimes really missing the small little moments that are the ones that you'll remember. So the same thing when we're going into this season of holidays, this jam-packed season of holidays, I just want you to think, you know what? I'm going to approach this holiday season as if I'm coming back, as if I'm traveling back there again next year. There's always next year. Maybe we don't see the Nutcracker this year. Well, guess what? The Nutcracker plays every single holiday. Every single December, the Nutcracker is going to be at your local theater. So maybe it's not this time. Maybe I'll just reserve that for next time. The second thing that she looks at travel with is you want to plan out when you travel somewhere what you want to do. There might be certain sites and certain touristy things that everybody does. I remember when Braden and I were planning our trip to Rome, and we made the decision that we were going to do one thing a day. Then we were going to let the rest of the day just kind of happen the way that it was meant to, right? Maybe we were going to sit at this cafe. Maybe we were going to walk through these gardens. Maybe we were going to do that, but one thing a day. And as we were planning it out, we realized that we had to make a decision that the Vatican is something really incredible to see in Rome, but we were going to have to decide that we would do that in place of something else. And so I said to Braden, okay, first of all, you'll be back in Italy someday, so we don't have to see everything this time. And second of all, what do you really want to do? Well, he said, I really want to do a cooking class. So he wanted to make ravioli and he wanted to make tiramisu. And that's what we did. We did not go to the Vatican and we had a 2-hour cooking class. We had so much fun. And if you ask Braden today, what was one of the favorite things that you did in Italy? I promise you, I bet money that he's going to say it was the cooking class, right? So just because other people do certain things during the holidays doesn't mean that you have to. Do you enjoy it? Do you even like it? I remember when Maddie was little and she was in preschool, I loved the idea that we were going to get all the little cutie girls in her class and they were going to come over and we were going to make gingerbread houses, right? That feels very Hallmarky. That feels like the perfect thing you would do in the holidays. It was a disaster. It was awful. Okay, first of all, if you don't get the pre-made ones, do you know how hard it is to get those gingerbread walls to stand up and to harden enough to put a gingerbread roof on? Okay, no go. So I was crazy enough that after that first year, everything collapsing, and so the girls just making gingerbread walls instead of gingerbread houses. The next year I was like, okay, I got this. We're going to get pre-made gingerbread houses. All right, sounds better. Have you ever gotten a pre-made gingerbread house? Yeah. I would say that after whoever stocks the shelves at whatever store you're at, would you like to know how many gingerbread houses are still intact in those boxes? Yeah, I can tell you. Not very many. It only took me 2 years to say to the moms, we are never doing this again. We are going to make gingerbread men from now on. Okay, I thought this is just not something I enjoy and it's stressing me out and the kids don't like it. Why are we doing it? Okay, so thing number one, as you go into the holidays and at that dinner we had with my mom, we started to ask the kids these very things. You know, it's not just what I want to do and what I enjoy and maybe what we're going to do this year and what we're going to do next year, but it's also a great conversation to have with your family. Because many times the things that you assumed or thought that were important to them are not necessarily the case. So, number one, we're going to reframe the no. Not all traditions, obligations, and invitations need a yes. Okay, number two. The next thing we're going to do is make a list of holiday no's. So, maybe there's some things that you just want to pull back on this year. Maybe there are extra events. Maybe it's over the top decorating. Maybe it's excessive gift giving. I have a friend who is having a baby right after Christmas. It's her first baby, years and years and years of IVF. And she is the kind of girl that goes all out. I mean, she just has a gift, right? Well, she was saying the other day, you know what? I'm thinking that this year, it would be so magical right now to have all of the holiday things. I'm finally pregnant. I'm nesting. We're getting ready to have this baby. She's like, but the thought of undecorating all of these things with a newborn, that's a no for me. So she's making the decision, how much capacity not only do I have right now, but how much capacity will I have when the moment actually comes? I thought that was really smart. You know, and when you're making your list of holiday no's, I just want you to ask yourself, what presents do people actually remember? Whether it's your kids or whoever you gift give for. You know, so many times the things that, again, we put value to are not necessarily the things that people will remember or that people will feel that made them special during this season. So again, I think back to the things that my kids remember about the holidays, and this was what we were saying at the dinner table. What are the things that are really important to you? What are the things that we can say no to? What are the things that we're going to make space for? Okay, and that took us to number 3. So again, number 1 was reframing the no. there's always next year. Don't you love that? There's always next year. Every year, there are Christmas lights that you can drive around and drink hot cocoa at. Every year, the same movies are going to play 24 hours a day. Every year, all of those things are going to happen. Maybe it's just not the year for it. And then again, number 2, what are the things I'm going to pull back on that I'm going to say no to? All right. Number 3 is creating your non-negotiable yes list. See, now we get to do the fun part. So what really does matter? And again, it's usually people. It's usually feelings. It's usually the memories. I saw somebody that just posted, "Hey mama, get the tripod out." You know, you can just get those cheap little ones, right? Or a selfie stick or whatever. Get that out and promise that you're going to take those pictures this holiday season, even if you feel like you've got a few more pounds on you, or if the lighting's not perfect or whatever. Take those pictures, because those are going to be something that you're going to look back on, not when everybody was perfectly matching and you just had your hair done, but the pictures of the people that you love. You'll be so glad that you did. So maybe that's a non-negotiable yes for you. Maybe it's making a special recipe that's just a non-negotiable yes, because it makes you remember your grandmother, or it brings everybody to the kitchen and they're all sitting around on stools while you're making something that they're going to enjoy soon. Or maybe not. I tell the story of the apple crumb pie my friend Maria makes so beautifully, and I just decided one year I wanted to make a beautiful apple crumb pie too, 2 of them, as a matter of fact. So homemade the crust, peeled and cored all the apples, you name it, hours in the kitchen, hours in the kitchen. Now, I know what you're thinking, that my apple crumb pie fell apart and it was awful in it. No, it was actually amazing. It tasted amazing. However, in about 2.5 seconds, both apple crumb pies were completely gone. And I said to myself, never again am I going to spend 5 hours in the kitchen for 5 seconds of pleasure of watching everybody. And I got some thank yous, but it wasn't near enough. So I am making sure that my yes list is really something that I want to say yes to. Non-negotiable. And that's the important part. Non-negotiable. Okay. Number 4, because it is November. How do you say no gracefully? So once you know why you're saying no, you have reframed it, you have your list of do's and don'ts, it's time for some phrasing and some strategies and some alternatives that feel true to you. So I'm going to go ahead, like a little platter, like I'm serving you. I'm going to give you a few of my favorites, and let's see if this helps you. Okay, so again, remember that I know this is the week of Thanksgiving. You might be able to use some of these tools this week, and you're really going to be using these tools as we go into the next few weeks that feel extremely busy and chaotic and full. All right, so here we go. If you want to pause me, you can. And hey, while you're pausing, make sure you go to the Apple podcast and give us a 5-star review. That is the best way that we can share this with friends. Okay, here are some ways to say no gracefully. And these are just mine, so you may have a plethora of yours. Here we go. We aren't doing that this year. Okay, that's it. Oh, thank you for the invitation. We're not doing that this year. Okay, or you could say, or this year we are. So that's more of the positive spin on that. Oh, I so appreciate that you offered this opportunity up to us. This year we are doing this instead. Okay, or next, oh goodness, that sounds amazing. That sounds so fun. We're actually going to save something like that for next year. Okay, so that's number 3. Number 4, you could simply say, oh, what a wonderful thing to be able to do. Our calendar is already booked. And by the way, that's a complete sentence. You don't need to tell them what it's booked with. It might be booked with having that hot cocoa and watching those movies. That's okay, because that was your non-negotiable yes list. So going out to a work party where nobody knows anybody, that may be something that you're just already booked for. Okay. Another thing that you could say is, thank you for thinking of me. It's just not going to work this time. And I'll go back and say these one more time. Or if you're a little chicken, Because I know sometimes you're like, oh, that sounds so good, but you don't know. Like, I'm going to feel pressure. They're going to say it's good for me, right? Like they said for Christy. You could always say, this is going to give you a little space. You could always say, you know what? Let me double check with you and I'll get back with you a little bit later. That gives you time to phone a friend or message me, DM me and say, oh my goodness, I'm feeling pressure to say yes, but I need to say no. And it gives you some breathing room so you can make your best response. Because you know what? At the end of the day, your best response, it might be yes to it, but at least you're not going to feel pressured. Okay, so here we go. Again, here's some of the ways that we can say no gracefully. We're not doing that this year, or this year instead we are, or we're saving that for next year, or our calendar is already booked, or thank you for thinking of me. It's not going to work this time. Or again, for my chickens out there, you're going to say, you know what, let me double check and I'll get back with you a little bit later, or, a little bit later today or whatnot. Okay, so the whole purpose of this, as we are filled with gratitude and appreciation, and we love being around the people that matter to us the most, and we love the string of holiday lights in our downtown as we're driving with Christmas music on or whatever that is, we want to make sure that those are the priority. I mean, at the end of the day, I've been saying to myself over and over and over again, if I don't have time in my schedule for the things that I really want to do, what am I doing? So this holiday season, if you don't have time for the things that you really want to do, that when you lay your head on your pillow on Christmas Eve or Christmas night or New Year's Eve, you're going to say, oh, this was the best season yet. So how do we do that? We reframe our no. We make our list of holiday no's. Then we create our non-negotiable yes list. And then we just lovingly and gracefully say no. And it just reminds me and it makes me feel like my name is no, my number is no, right? All right, friends. So I hope that this gives you the courage and the wherewithal and the bravery and also just the power to finish up this beautiful month of November, to go into December fully armed and ready and sharpened up with your no, which will lead to many yeses for your yes December. Okay, so that's coming up. You're going to enjoy several weeks of strategy to really streamline and make your December fantastic. And then I have a treat for you. We're going to be really getting into planning our, in business, they call it Q1 or our brand new year. And as I mentioned, I've got some fun things in store for you to come. So as always, when you're listening, if you're thinking, gosh, I love this information, but I need someone to help me with the implementation. It sounds good and I listen and I feel like I'm going to do it. And then reality sets in. Well, that's what I'm here for. And that's what a time management coach does, is holds you accountable and also helps customize all of these ideas that we have around time, customize it for you. So that's what I have available for you. And I do free calls so you can check out the show notes or you can DM me and let's chat and see if maybe going into the new year when I'm opening up for some new clients that might be perfect for you. All right. Well, thanks so much. Have a blessed Thanksgiving. If you're listening now, November means yes, December. God bless. Thank you for joining me on the TikTok podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and leave a 5-star review. Your feedback fuels our mission to help you master your time. Set your alarm for our next episode, and until then, make every moment count.